be back. I've not been around for a while. I've been writing a book actually, a bit more about that later. But it's very good to be back with you, and I'm really pleased that you've joined. So thank you for watching. It's all about technology readiness levels, or TRLs, and how you can use them to accelerate your innovation. And don't be put off by the word technology. So if your innovation you don't think is very techy, that's okay, because these principles apply to all kinds of innovation. So I hope you enjoy what we've got in store, and I'll be back in a minute just after this.
This is the Idea Time Show with Dr. Jo North, helping facilitators expand their creativity, confidence and impact through the power of innovation in action. Gain confidence as a facilitator, confidence with the technology, and confidence with your content and event design. Tune in every week for practical tips, strategies, and interviews that will accelerate your personal and business success. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jo North.
Yes, so it's all about TRLs, Technology Readiness Levels, and how you can use those to accelerate your sustainable innovation. So what I'm going to be talking about is understanding TRLs, defining them, say what their importance is for us as innovators, entrepreneurs, researchers, and what are the benefits of using TRLs, not just to ourselves when we're doing the work, but to other people, other stakeholders as well. I'll give you some examples of where TRLs are used, and they're used worldwide, but I'll give you some examples of that, and then give you a detailed breakdown of each of the technology readiness levels, and what sort of that stage represents, and really importantly, what to do to progress from one TRL to another. And finally, I'll be giving you some pointers for some useful free resources that you can use if this is something you want to explore in a bit more detail and go into some more depth with. So I hope that's okay, and as always, whether you're watching live or on replay, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know what your comments and questions are, and I will respond to all of those. So let's get started. So what is a TRL? What is a technology readiness level? Well, it was a system devised by NASA in the 1970s because they wanted to track how far along, how mature their innovations were when it came to actually being able to be used for real in the space environment. So it's a scale from 1 to 9. 1 is the lowest maturity, and 9 is the highest level of maturity, which means it's able to be used and is being used on a mission. And what TRLs do is they give a common language for all stakeholders, so that everybody knows roughly where an innovation is at because of TRLs. From NASA, it's been used outside in lots of different industries and all around the world. It's become a quite standardised method for knowing where an innovation is, and it's really helpful for supporting the innovation process as well, because you can identify where you are and what you need to do to move forward, and it gives you some options around that as well. So and as I've said earlier, please don't think it only applies to technology in the strictest sense. It applies to anything new that you're doing. So any innovation of any kind, these principles are really very helpful. So the importance for innovators is that we have an idea, or we're working on something and we can think it's really, really good and it sounds amazing. And it can be very tempting to skip some stages and get that innovation out there as quickly as possible, and maybe scale something sooner than we I'd ordinarily should. Or maybe we're stuck, we don't know how to move forward, and we need a bit of guidance in terms of how to move things along. So what technology readiness levels do is it helps us to see where we are with a bit more objectivity in that innovation process, and think about what we need to do next. So it's good for progress tracking, and it's good for road mapping the way forward. It also helps us to reduce risk by working through the process fully, and as we've said, it's a really good way of communicating to other people where we think the innovation is at and why, so we can communicate that development stage. And it's really good to know, because whatever sector you're in, often if you're bidding for some innovation grant funding, for instance, or you're looking for investment, you'll need to be able to explain where your technology readiness level is at, what stage of maturity and commercialisation is the innovation that you're offering. And this gives you a really good way, and sometimes it's actually requested by funders or investors. It gives you a really good way of getting consistency of understanding around that. So there are benefits to other stakeholders. By the way, stakeholder is anyone who's got an interest in or influence over what you're doing. So as we've said, for grant funders and investors, it can help them to evaluate the viability of your innovation. It can inform their decisions as well. For researchers, it can guide research. So maybe there's some work going on in a university and you can see where you are, but also what needs to happen to get that research knowledge out and being used in the world for real. And it also helps with collaboration. Again, it's that shared language concept as well. And for end users, the people that are going to be benefiting, the consumers, the customers of this, expectation management and adoption readiness, so they know what to expect and what stage you're at. So these technology readiness levels are used all across all sorts of sectors, and here are just a few examples. The government and public sector, and as we've said, a lot of government innovation funding requires you to let them know which TRL you're at and which TRL you're hoping to get to in your innovation process as a result of the funding, as a result of that investment. Space, we've talked about NASA inventing TRLs back in the 70s, but it's still used today in the space industry. The European Space Agency, for instance, also using it. Life sciences, things like biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, defence, and also organisations like the European Defence Fund require TRLs in their work. Maritime, of course, close to my heart, rail, aerospace, nuclear, and academia, and many, many more. So it's really, really good to be aware of what TRLs are, what stage your innovation is at, and how to communicate where you're at. It's a good tool to have. By the way, and if you're interested in more sort of case studies around sustainable innovation, just a very quick plug. I said I've been away for a few months from doing these live presentations, but I have been writing a book, and that's it. That's the cover. So it's Leading Sustainable Innovation. It came out this month, and I'm really very proud of it. But actually, there's some really good case studies in there of real sustainable innovations from places like the Port of Tyne, from Equinor, Microsoft, National Nuclear Laboratory, the Game Changers programme that Sellafield run. Lots and lots of great examples of innovation in there. Let's have a look then at an overview of TRLs, the whole process. So as I've explained, TRLs run from the lowest level of maturity, which is TRL 1, through to the highest level, which is level 9. And you can really divide those TRLs into 3 sections. So TRLs 1 to 3 are all about developing knowledge. TRLs 4 to 6 are about technology development and getting things to work, really, demonstrating, creating prototypes, starting to think about them working in the environment. And the final 7 to 8 and 9, the final stages, are about business development and getting that out into the world for real. And often the first stages 1 to 3 are associated with academia or research or real startup territory. Stages 4 to 6 are around collaboration and working with others, including sometimes some end users towards the latter stages to get the innovation out and functional, and then finally into industry. So you can see that that there are these different 9 stages, and these 9 stages all represent a different element of maturity. And I'll just take you through what those are at a really high level. So TRL 1 is where there are some basic scientific or other principles. There's some R&D. There's some there's some research being done, um, but that research hasn't really been experimented with. There's not been further analysis done. It's not used in any way. It's really some research, and it may be that that research seems to have some potential to have some usefulness. At TRL level 2, this is where the technology concept starts to be formulated. So this is around looking at basic concepts, identifying potential applications and uses for the innovation, and often this is still speculative theoretical research. As we get into TRL3, this is now about more about experimental proof of concept and doing some more active research and development. So things like analytical and laboratory-based studies to see if the concept will work. So if you think of, let's move it away from technology and think of a really simple example. If you think, for instance, of a business that starts off as a kitchen table business, there might be, an idea for a new recipe. You might start to think about what that might look like and play around and have some ideas about ingredients, and then start to maybe make up some small batches of things to see how well those ingredients work together and how well the recipe's working. As a very simple example, just so that you get the idea. Okay, so now we've started to play around with putting things together and seeing how it works. At TRL level 4, the innovation is validated, usually in a laboratory sort of environment or a setup environment. So, and you're sort of thinking, is this likely to work? So, still at the feasibility stage, TRL 5 is about then moving it into the relevant environment and simulating what that might be. And TRL level 6 is then about demonstrating that technology in the real environment, and it was quite close to an operational setting. So if you take my very simple example of the recipe, you might try and make it up in a small kitchen, and then start to think about, okay, well, if you want to produce this at scale, how might you do this for real, in a larger kitchen environment, but without getting too big yet, and just making sure that everything still is doable and works okay. I hope this example is all right, by the way, but I will give you some more examples and point you in the direction of some more a little bit later. So now we're moving into the business development or the operationalisation of technology readiness. So TRL level 7 is creating a prototype and showing it work in an operational environment. So that might be creating a pilot plant, or making a small batch of something and testing it. TRL 8 is then about making sure everything works together, because no innovation exists in a vacuum, right? It all needs to work with everything around it. So it's working okay in the expected conditions, everything's integrated and it's looking good, so that you can get to TRL 9, which is about making the technology deployed and operational. So again, in our kitchen table example of a new recipe, this would be about moving into a bigger manufacturing kitchen, going into full production, testing that full production, so that you can really scale up and get those recipes out into the world at a lot more scale. So this is really important. It's about testing the technology, but it's also about making sure that you can do things at scale, because in the earlier technology readiness levels, what can happen is something works or it seems to be feasible, but then the challenge of scaling up is quite high. And I was thinking of one example that some researchers gave me actually in the biorenewables sector, and they were talking about that they'd managed to extract some really valuable liquid out of waste product, but they needed so much waste product and they only got such a small amount of the good liquid out of it, that to do that commercially they'd need loads and loads and loads of waste, and they'd need a plant that was so huge it just wouldn't be commercially feasible. So this is often quite a challenge. Things work well at a small scale on paper, and how do you expand them out and make them bigger. So TRLs can help you move forward and accelerate your innovation through all of that. Okay, so that's a walk through the TRLs. What I'll do now is just talk about the TRLs and think about, well, how do you move from one to the other? And these are just some suggestions. There's lots of ways of doing this, but it's just to give you some ideas. So for instance, to move from TRL 1 to TRL level 2, it's about really understanding the problem, giving a great definition of that problem, being really clear, because if you're not clear from the outset, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and how does that problem need to be solved, and making sure you're solving it in the right way, then you're going to sort of take a few steps forward and have to come back again to resolve that. So getting the problem sorted in the early stages is good. Which brings me on to another point actually, which is, although these TRL levels look, it's a nice linear, lovely process, isn't it, from 1 to 9. But sometimes there is a bit of movement backwards and forwards. You think you're moving forward to the next TRL, but in doing so, in that movement, you realise actually there's something you need to go backwards and have another look at. So it can be a bit of an iterative process as well. So back to moving from TRL level 1 to 2. Define the problem, do a literature review. That simply means, reading and looking at and researching everything that's out there, what's been written, what's been done before, what's the research showing, and formulating your initial hypotheses. So how do you think this will be working going forward? To get from TRL level 2 to TRL level 3, that's about starting to model how you think it'll work, doing some experimental setup and data analysis. And of course, data analysis will be happening all the way through the process. It's just you might be doing a significant amount of it at this level. It depends on what your innovation is. To move from TRL level 3 to TRL level 4, that's about developing a prototype. A prototype is a more evolved proof of concept. So a proof of concept is about feasibility. A prototype is taking that to the next level, maybe testing it perhaps in a lab environment and doing that iterative refinement that we've been talking about. To get from TRL level 4 to 5, even more advanced prototyping, simulated environmental testing, and starting to get more stakeholder feedback, especially from users, potential customers, and so on. To move from TRL level 5 to TRL level 6, testing it out in the field, getting closer to that real environment that your innovation will be operating in, looking at performance metrics, thinking about technical documentation, so that then you can move from TRL 6 to TRL 7, integrating your innovation with the full system, doing your operational testing, and also making sure that everything is compliant from a regulation point of view. And of course, compliance always needs to be a consideration all the way through, but particularly as you're getting towards these end stages, these latter stages of TRLs. And then 7 to 8 is about user training, pilot programs, and having a good feedback loop, so that you get to get finally your innovation out there in the world, doing its thing, performing well, full deployment, so that you can monitor how it's going and get your innovation launched and out to market. So moving through those is really is really important to do and keep progressing. So I hope that's been okay as an introduction to TRLs. As I've promised you some free resources to point you in the direction of those. I've actually got a more detailed article on TRLs on the Big Bang Partnership website, bigbangpartnership.co.uk. What are TRLs? And there's a whole article there. And there's also some great resources from NASA. I like NASA's Technology Readiness Level definitions. If you just Google that, that comes up. But that also gives you a hardware description, software description, and how you move out of one phase into another. You might also like, if you really want to get nerdy on these things, or maybe you are, you genuinely need this level of detail. I find it really interesting. I'm not scientific at this level by any stretch of the imagination, but have a look at NASA's Technology Readiness Assessment Best Practices Guide. Again, just Google that, and there's a whole document there with some really interesting detail as well. And even if NASA and space isn't your area of expertise, just actually skimming that and looking at the content can be quite inspiring, about helping you think about some things to consider to progress your innovation and accelerate it. And I really like the Horizon Europe TRL assessment tool. Again, the links are here for you, but just to make it quick and easy, just Google Horizon Europe TRL assessment tool, and you can see that when you do that for lots of different areas, like a manufactured product, an industrial process, a software, a medical device, a drug, they've outlined from TRLs 3 to 9 what are the characteristics of each stage, and there's a link for each of those types of innovation as well. So you can see real examples of different innovations at their different TRL stages. So I found that really helpful. Okay, so that's it from me today. It's a quick one. I hope that's been useful. Let me know what you think. Any questions, observations, or anything you'd like to share, please do put it in the chat. And this has been live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So if you don't subscribe to YouTube, please do so. Or if you don't connect on LinkedIn, then please find me over there. It's Jo North. And of course, there's lots more great and free resources over at bigbangpartnership.co.uk/resources. And if you're interested in the book, do check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Idea Time Show, brought to you by Dr. Jo North. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and access more completely free resources at bigbangpartnership.co.uk/resources. We'll see you next time.